Everybody, and to Marla's point earlier, Happy New Year to everybody. It's January is almost over, but excited about what this new year will bring to the work of Affordable Housing Coalition and the parsing together the 10-year housing plan as we begin to move forward. There are a couple of things for us to around discussion on some items that we want to get input, understand a little better as we move forward through this. And so we want to make sure that we navigate our way through those points as we move forward here. And so with that, before we get into the key items we have listed on the agenda, Marla, not sure if you wanted to frame any of that or if you want to just kick it over to Andronika to kind of get some conversation around where we are and then go into our three agenda items.
I'd like to just punt to Andronika because I think we might need to do a little bit of a recap of the last conversation. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the table again, and then we can just roll right into the rest of the agenda.
Got it. Andronika, the floor is yours.
You're on mute.
Wait, I'm sorry. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. It's good to see all of you. I'm sorry we weren't able to get back engaged with you all a little bit sooner. Signing contracts with city entities is always fun, and especially once you get not just the city's lawyers, but both sets of lawyers involved. It becomes quite adventurous, and so we're still working on that. But Marla and I agreed that we needed to get moving, and we needed to get started to get things kicked off. At the last meeting, as Marla said, we wanted to share a recap with everybody on some of the next steps, and we want to adjust the schedule a little bit. After this meeting, I'm going to send you all actually we're going to go over it right now. I need to just pull it up for a second because I want to send it to you afterwards, and we're going to go over it together. The action plan that we have put together and the timing, which unfortunately we are going to have to adjust. But I think it's going to be fine. We'll be able to keep it on track and keep everything going the way that we want it to go. And that first step to the agenda item that's on here, we are going to be talking about communications and community engagement. And those are the first big items that we want to get started. We'd like to have a kickoff, and really two kickoffs. One, to introduce it to the public, to announce it, to firing the starting pistol, as it were, not to be hey, if you don't get in now, you can never get in. And also a strategic session with some key partners, like getting some of your philanthropic organizations, business leaders, folks who have not been participating. You all are at an advantage. You have this coalition, which boasts a very diverse body, but we'd also like to get your help in formulating a list for both of those events in the upcoming week, because we're going to need your help with that. And then we would want to zero in on some dates for those events to kick them off, so we can plan back into some things, secure locations, and get this moving.
Andronika, quick question. If you could go back, what are you having to make changes to the action plan because of the lawyer work, or what's the genesis of
no? Well, the delays have pushed us back about 6 weeks. So that's all. It's just it's not changing. Yeah, exactly. It's not we can't do this. It's,
okay.
Yeah.
we had some challenges.
The deliberate speed
on the city side with the contract. Yeah, some things.
Not just the city side, it's not just the city side. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I just.
But yeah, it's not substantive. It's not substantive change. It's not change to the work plan, except for the timing, right? Okay. Because
Thank you.
We envisioned really kicking off in December, and that we were hoping to do some things before the break. We acknowledged when we put that schedule together that it was ambitious, right? And that we had, we'd hoped to do some of that groundwork in December, like those 2 weeks beforehand. We're starting them about a month later than we intended, 3 weeks later than we intended. So we're going to have to adjust accordingly.
Okay.
So right. That's the adjustment. None of it is to any of the things that we have committed to do and that we've talked about doing. It's just the timing. And we also are hopeful we can make up some of the time, because we did put in some cushions. Okay. To make sure that's going, but we want to make sure that we go over that with everybody. And I had it pulled up here, and it hold on one second.
And I've given you permission to share your screen.
Thank you.
Like.
All right, here we go. When you lose things sometimes, and again, we're going to share this with everybody afterwards. Marla emailed me, reached out to me. I was traveling the last couple of days so that I could send this on. And I thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, we should email this to everybody. I said, well, we'll go over it. And Marla tried to get it for y'all, and so you would have hard copies to review. But that did not work. But we'll get it to you all today, as soon as we. Marlon, what's the best way for us to share information with the committee? The most appropriate way to share things with them?
So I can, if you don't see it on the invite information, I can just send you everyone's email address.
I can respond all. I just want to make sure that that's appropriate.
Yes.
And obviously, I wouldn't email everybody without talking to you first.
Right. And you may not.
Okay.
We'll talk about the list, because I don't know that TV13 would want to get all of the documents and.
Okay.
People, so we'll go over it.
Okay. Oh, so yeah, we'll go over who to send it to, but then I can send it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
So as you can see, we were looking at soft launch in late December, the beginning of the listening tour. So those things are going to have to be pushed, and that's where we're going to try to make up some time. We want to also talk about getting you all shifting that back and saying some of the initial data analysis is going to be done. We want to set up a meeting with you all to review some of the preliminary data that we started to collect. We're going to be doing a lender capacity assessment. As I recall, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but you all have some lenders on the call. We've also done some outreach already with people like some of your local lenders, some of your bigger lenders like our friends at, oh goodness, I'm blanking on their names, the big bank that's all, Wells Fargo. I know that they have not been, by their own admission, they have not been good partners to you all, but they have a lot of atoning to do. And there's they are a bank in y'all's market that we've worked with in the past, and they are really interested in engaging so that they can address some of their larger sins and things like that. Marketing strategic plan, we want to do a summary for everybody of what we found and some information that we've looked at. Want to do some branding and logo and talking to you all about what we want to call the 10-year plan, right? How do you want to refer to it? Launching a website, then having those kickoff meetings, stakeholder meetings, and engaging the team members. That stuff is all happening already, and so some of that work is happening. But we wanted to go over adjustments to the schedule with you all, and start talking about your meeting schedule, because you all are going to act as the advisory committee for this project. And so we need to talk about how frequently you all want to meet. You're already meeting, I know that, but we're going to need to talk to you a little bit more frequently than you're already meeting, and what that looks like. I will tell you, when we did the Housing NOLA plan, there was a point where we had a small executive committee that was meeting weekly for about 30 minutes as things were going. And again, when I say small, we're only talking about like 3 or 4 people who we wanted to be involved in some critical discussions, especially once we start the schedule of public meetings. We can talk about that when the time comes, but I'd like to check in with you all, or at least an executive committee on a monthly basis to, and then there's going to be some bigger presentations that we're going to have to make with the larger group over the coming months. So we'll try to fit those in with your standing meeting schedule where appropriate, but we're gonna probably talk to you all about that. And we will, one of the things that you're also going to get, you're going to get the initial version of this, and then we're going to also send you early next week a proposed schedule that we're going to need you all to weigh in on. So we have on the schedule today, and so then we're talking about the larger. We're going to, like I said, we're going to change some of the dates and push things so that and fold some things together, because some of these, as I said, when we were looking at doing these initial pieces were things we were hoping to get done by the end of December. We're going to try and get them done by the end of February and pick up the time and do some of these things together. And to try to keep to the schedule as much as possible. So we just need to really evaluate that now that we have the green light. But the big thing that I wanted to go over with you all this morning was things like communications. Before we can communicate about the plan, we need to talk about what we're going to call it. And this very much needs to be something. It doesn't need to be a name that's tested or anything like that, but we would like you all, I'd like to facilitate a real robust discussion around that. So one, we can get moving on doing things like buying the domain and starting to sketch out and provide you all with some logo options for you to look at, because that's all going to be germane to the branding and pieces like that. So, and also, go ahead. Yes, Derwin.
Just before we go into that, just want to make sure clarity on the time frame and timeline. Are you and Marla going to coordinate the update on that and then send that back out to us so we kind of get a sense of that?
Yes.
Updated timeline.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I want to make that clear. Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, since you got a pause right there, thank you for that question too, Derwin. I was just curious about the name, and Andronika, I don't know if you want some discussion about that now, or if you're going to go to something else before.
No, I want to talk about the name now.
Because I was just going to ask a question, and obviously you are aware, I'm sure, that of the email that John Rayleigh sent to all of us asking about the different housing plans that Winston has either had supported or used or whatever. Will any of the things, and I don't have and I'm sure Marla and others may have the document in front of them, but listed 3 or 4 different things that Winston has done in the past around affordable housing. I didn't know whether we needed to be mindful of any of that work before we name what this is in order to make sure that it's distinguished from the other work.
So, and that's a great question to ask about that, Joe. That work will be included in the analysis, right? In the research. We're not going to pretend like this is something new to Winston-Salem. We are going to look at what's been done before, distill it, talk about because there's things in there that are, from my cursory review, that haven't been done. So you want to talk about bringing them back to the community so that they can make a decision, that the collective can make a decision about whether or not it's something that continues. Mm-hmm. It's the data is critical in understanding where y'all have come from. So that work is going to be acknowledged, right, inside of the overall report. Okay. and pieces like that. The naming of that is truly up to you all, right? Do you want it to be iterative? Do you want it to be something completely different? There isn't any really wrong answer except to name some, except to not name it, right? And it doesn't have to be anything exceedingly clever, right? It could be the 10-year housing plan for Winston-Salem. It does not have to be something terribly clever. Once we settle on a name, no matter how clever or how accurate it is, the designers are going to have a dizzying array of selections that that logo piece, that visceral reaction that you're going to get from it, that will be the piece that's, that's going to be the thing that y'all are really going to struggle with, frankly.
Yeah.
Right?
Joe, I would say, Joe,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, to your point, Joe, I think with what, John, I've had a conversation with John Ray about it as well, but into the broader community, though, it's something that showcases the fact that this is an action, this is actual action plan. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is the concept, the thought of, here's one more plan that's going to tell us how to plan, rather than
here's one more study that's going to, right.
Yeah. Right. And that's the only, I don't know what the answer is, but something that showcases a statement of, this is action. This is actionable.
Right.
And to be clear, yes. And I also want to make y'all real comfortable with, I'd like to get out of here today with a concept that I can bring to the designers with the understanding that we can tweak it, right? Because I find this kind of process, and I'm not trying to rush y'all, but I don't want you to feel like this, we have to decide today, and whatever we tell her, that's it, right? No. The designers will, like I said, come back with some options. We'll bring them back to you all. We'll circulate them in advance, and probably even try to facilitate some conversations via email. Go back to the designers, and then let y'all choose from that. And we got folks got their hands up.
I was starting to say something just now.
Oh,
yeah, I was just going to say, I actually had some interaction with John Raley when he contacted me, I guess, as he did all of us. And the thing that I emphasized to John that is different in this than all that other stuff, I said all that other stuff from what I was reading was tons of ideas about what could be done. I said, the difference in this is none of those other things explained how it's going to get done. Mm-hmm. How are we going to use all the partners? How are we going to get the financing?
That's right.
What's going to, so this actually puts the feet on the ground in terms of how it gets done versus just what do we want to do? So maybe the name,
so it sounds like
the name can emphasize the how.
Action. Yeah. So, gentlemen, I want to give Paula a chance because she has very patiently been waiting with her hand up.
Yeah, and I think Marla's hand was up before mine. But my question is that there has been, some conversation in the community about housing terms and definitions, and about us being on the same page, about those terms. And so I know we talked, seems like eons ago, about creating a glossary of terms. And I just want to get some clarity on that, how are we gonna deal with that as it relates to this community conversation?
So we have a glossary that we use across communities. These terms are, the good news is that most of the terms inside of housing, particularly when you're talking about this kind of work, are universal. We're going to want to add some things and get y'all's input from that. So I can also include the current version of the glossary that we use to go into community for y'all to look at as well. But we've already got that part covered. There would be things that we want to add, like, some things that are specific to y'all, but the glossary that we have is very, it's just housing, it's housing terms. It's like HUD housing terms. It's the jargon. And Paula, that's your point, right? That the jargon is confusing. It's deliberately and intentionally sometimes off-putting. And so, because we're also working with HUD on their community engagement toolkit. So this is something that we've been trying to get HUD to use as well. Yeah.
So we actually had created one based on you all's, Andronika. So I'm going to send you.
That's right. You told me that.
Yeah,
that's right.
But I'll send
me that.
Yeah,
send me that. That's perfect.
Because I last did a few updates on it in December, I think, to know, to recognize like ARPA and maybe a couple of other things. So I'll
Right,
send you what is our latest iteration, because I was going to send it to the group, Paula, that you were talking about, the Folks for Good Housing, as well as the city. The city has a workforce housing policy, and it defines what that is. So I was going to send that to the group, as well as, the HUD definition. I mean, median income, that's set by HUD, and it's not subject to interpretation, right? So there were some things that are just kind of standard to the work that I just think we needed to share with the larger group. But I'll send Andronika ours and get some feedback. But Andronika, just know that I was looking to share this glossary, within the next week or so with this other group in the community that is struggling to come up with or understand the various terminology that we use in the field. My hand went up originally, and Paul kind of touched on it about the previous work that we've done, and just kind of as a recap for some, one was exclusively a study on vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties, and what can the city do to remove blight and blighting influences in the community. So that's one piece. Then we had what was under the umbrella of what was called For Everyone Home, which dealt with gentrification, right? Anti-displacement policies and what we can do. There were things that came out of the vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated property study, as well as the For Everyone Home. One of the things that resonated and was consistent was the city needs a land bank, right? Because it was determined that the city is already taking care of hundreds of parcels of land every year, cutting and mowing and things of that nature. Well, if we're already shepherding that property, why don't we have it so that we can determine its future, right? And so, they are related to housing, but aren't necessarily housing studies per se. The one real housing study was the Housing Study and Needs Assessment that Enterprise Community Partners did in late 2018. So I think, one of the things as we talk about communication and even referencing the work that's been done previously, we have to make sure that we clearly articulate what those things were, how they fit into a larger picture, but they weren't in and of themselves housing studies or housing plans, other than the original Housing Study and Needs Assessment. Because I think that's part of the challenge, is there is a tendency to name everything a housing plan or name everything a housing study, and that's not actually what these things are. They're intended to provide a foundation that informs ultimately how we go about doing the work, where we target our efforts and resources and things of that nature. So I just kind of wanted to build upon what Paul said. And I really, Paul, again, I really appreciated your responses to John. They were spot on, and I appreciate that.
Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay, thank you, Darren. I just want to make sure, I'm glad you went through that, Marla, because as we all know that there are current projects underway now with ground broken and dirt turned, and things are being called workforce housing and the different kinds of market. Yeah, so I don't know, what the glossary will show, but we have to, somehow there's got to be a way to make sure that what's currently being done doesn't have to be redefined, and for the community not to think that, there was, false or deceptive practices that were utilized to get certain things done, because they have been done under the guise of affordable housing, if you would, kind of thing. So I don't know how that works, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, and maybe that doesn't even need to play into it, kind of thing. But I just thought I'd make sure that we were aware that there were current projects underway now that would be relevant to some of that language. And
George, you want to go ahead and chime in? Or you can't give us a thumbs up, actually.
I was only saying that I agree with Joe, and I think that was to Paula's point earlier. that it's a lot of different housing groups out there, and some of us are actually members of some of those other groups. So
Right.
I just think it's important that as we move forward, we don't forget the work that those other housing groups are trying to do as well. So as we set up meetings,
That's right.
and come up with terms and all of the other things coming forward, it's just important that we do mention the work that has been done, but also try to get together to come up with some common terminology. Of course, we all try and use HUD guidelines, but workforce housing, low income housing, mixed income use. I mean, all of those terms out there in some circles have a negative connotation associated with them. So I think it's important that before we jump out there and start meeting with people in public, we as a group come up with what is something that we want to stand on in case we have to answer those questions. And again, those different housing studies, as Marla said, everything isn't a housing study. That's fine, but some of the people we'll be interacting with don't know too much about housing. So we just need to be able to cover the very basics. So just wanted to say, yeah, I kind of agree with what Joe and Paula was saying. Thanks.
Paula?
Yeah, and
thank you, George.
Paula, your hand too, but before you jump in, Paula, just one more quick thing, background just on the housing needs assessment from 2018, just background context for that one for a group, just a reminder. That reason that study was even done was because although now today from many of the elected officials that you'll get a response to say they clearly understand that we have a affordable housing need, that was not clearly defined and was not clearly accepted prior to that time frame. And so that 2018 study was essentially done to attempt to provide both a quantitative and qualitative assessment that says, hey, this is actually an issue. This is actually a problem that we have to address. And that was within the last 20 years, the first time we had such a real full assessment like that happening in the community to provide that. Time-wise, and that's the thing I shared with John Rayleigh as well, because of the point that many people are making is, well, we know the issue, we know the problem, we just need to solve it. We don't need another plan. But just wanted to add that piece because for background in the 2018 study. But Paula, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as it relates to the terms, the glossary of terms, some of these terms may generate some dialogue that I think may need to be had with some of the groups that are also working on housing. And one of those is this term for workforce housing. I think that the city's definition is 80 to 100% AMI, which some believe that this excludes restaurant workers and folk like that because they don't make $60,000 a year. And so that excludes them. And so I think that there may need to be some dialogue about that or some conversation anyway about, what those terms really mean and how do you include people who making less than $60,000, but are also considered workforce, jobs.
So making less than 80% makes you eligible for the other programs that our investments cover. So it's not intended to be exclusive. As a matter of fact, I think that particular band of affordability was created with the recognition that there are some people who might not otherwise fit in that what might be considered lower moderate income range, but still needed help, right? So the thing is, the HUD money can be used for those who are 80% and below. Then you use other sources of funding, non-federal sources, for those who are 81% and above. So one of the distinctions is where you pull your money to support those in need. So your restaurant workers would fall under that 80% range, right? So they would be eligible for the home and CDBG funded projects, right? Or developments. Some might even be able to be eligible to live in a tax credit funded project, right? So actually the creation of workforce was an add-on for those who fell between the cracks, essentially. Didn't make enough of market, but were just a little bit outside of that band for low moderate that the federal government covers. So yeah, all of those things, can be fleshed out and better articulated. But I think first and foremost, understanding where that came from and why that's a theme, workforce housing, is important. And I've already sent you the glossary, but I also want to remind you, I think I've shared this before and we'll share it again, the information from paycheck to paycheck. Remember with the National Housing Conference, where you can go in, put in Winston-Salem, you can choose from 100 occupations, and it'll show you what the average rent is, or fair market rent for this community is, or the average sales price for a home. And you put in that occupation, and it tells you how much people make in that range and how much they need to afford if it's rental, 1, 2, 3 bedroom, or if they want a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house. But I think understanding, and certainly Derwin can speak more to this, because Derwin, I think, was on the council when the workforce housing policy was developed. Yeah, it was developed to kind of fill a gap, not to exclude people. Because if you're under 80%, you qualify for our traditional stuff. Over 80 is when like our bond financing would come into play, right? So I'll just kind of leave that there for the moment.
So a couple things on this point. What I'm hearing is, as we think about messaging, right, there is a need to encapsulate the work, right, to announce so we can make announcements, but we don't want to get too far down the road on certain things, starting with a foundational and building on the work that Winston-Salem already has when it comes to this glossary is helpful, but you all want to make sure that we open it up for more discussion and conversation. Because one thing is that to exactly the point that Paula raised and that Marla just illuminated, there are misunderstandings about the terminology, right? Like it means one thing to people who work with it every day and have to abide by the definition because that governs the resources that they have. And then it lands a different way to lay people who just hear the term, right? And it triggers them. So part of the process has to be is getting everybody to understand what we mean by these terms, to destigmatize and demystify at the same time. And then also talk about terminology that is respectful and is encouraging and is hopeful, right? And that doesn't mean that the city has to change, the city of Winston-Salem has to change how they refer to things. It's about how the plan that we are going to all offer together inspires and assures this community that this is possible. And that's a different thread. That's more than a glossary of terms. That's about making sure this community understands that this is possible. And there needs to be some, that kind of messaging will need to be tested in order to make sure that it resonates correctly. I will share with you at the end of it, we struggled here in New Orleans and said we wanted to call it something other than affordable housing. And throughout the process, and then at the end, everybody was like, no, we still need to call it affordable housing, right? And we went into it fully intending to redefine, to have a new term, a New Orleans term. And we didn't, because everybody was like, well, we've done the work, we've explained it. We feel like the community gets it. We feel like our neighbors understand it. You all may have the same journey, or you may decide, no, we're going to talk about it, especially when you talk about things like workforce housing, that depending on who you're talking to, it can come off as a pejorative, it can come off as condescending, it can come off as oh no, those are the ideals, right? And there's a lot of challenges with that, and so we also have to have those conversations, right? About, we have to understand what what people's reactions are to certain terms, determine if it's helpful or harmful, and then make a decision about if it's harmful, can we re-educate, right? Is it worth it? Because sometimes it's the squeeze isn't worth the juice, right? Especially if the folks actually do agree with you, it's just you can't get them past what that term means to them. It may be too much work to get them to adopt a term that is so ingrained in them as inherently negative. And so it might be worth it to move on, to pick something else, and to clearly define it. What does it mean to have housing that is affordable for everybody in Winston-Salem? What does that mean? That's got to be based on who's struggling with that issue right now and who do you want to prioritize? And what does living, right? Like, you want them to live comfortably, you want them to thrive. Do you want them to build wealth? What are the hopes for it? Because it's not going to just be somewhere for them to stay. Y'all are doing this because you want more than that. How much more?
You know, Andronica, I remember that we talked about this, you know, a couple of years ago, about the whole term affordable housing, and that for some people it had a negative connotation because some people think of affordable housing as public housing. And so we talked about
public housing.
Yeah, only public housing. So we talked about messaging around that term. And so I don't know if we built in, you know, if it remains affordable housing, for instance, do we build in some communication that helps the public understand what affordable housing really is? You know,
that's right.
Because it is what it is.
Right. That's right.
You can name it whatever.
Right. That's right. It's two different things. That's exactly right. This is the definition. This is the definition of the city of Winston-Salem has to abide by. Most of the resources you're going to raise are going to follow those strategies. The public money. But if, to Marla's point, there's a desire to help people above 80% area median income, which is something that you're going to want to look at, especially as you're worried about gentrification and young professionals being able to stay in Winston-Salem and living in diverse communities. Like, you want, you know, if you've got someone who's worked hard their whole lives and they put their kids through college, they have a modest home, but those kids are really experiencing the benefits of growing up in a home that their parents owned, and it was able to propel them to that next step. You want those folks to be able to stay in Winston-Salem, right, and not go to the suburbs. Call Winston-Salem home, and as they start on their path, they're going to probably need a little bit of help. They won't probably qualify for traditional programs. So the bond financing is also often something that works for those kind of folks. That is an affordable housing program. And so is it making sure people understand the definition is that expansive? Or is it, which again, Paula, to your point, or does the language in the report call it something else? And then everything is under that new umbrella.
Right. And if the definition is that people aren't paying more than 30% of their income, I don't care if their income is $20,000 or if it's $200,000.
Right.
It's 30% of your income, which seems to me like an educational piece, you know, to educate people about what is affordable housing. Okay.
Right,
so,
exactly. And I would always joke, I don't care about it. I don't care about any, if you make $1 million a year and you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing costs, I don't care. But if you are making $200,000 a year and you're spending more than 30%, a household making more than $200,000 a year probably has two parents, making good money, probably a couple of children though. And you do kind of care if that family's spending $60,000, $70,000 a year on their housing costs, right? Because that's a lot of money to be coming out of a single household. And then maybe, you know, it could be taxes, it could be utilities, it could be insurance that are really that got them struggling. It could be they bought a house that was too big for their budget, right? There's a lot of things that happen there. And those folks are people you want to try to persuade because they get it, but they're consumed with their own issues, and they're kind of it sometimes encourages or provokes a meanness, right? They're like, well, I'm busting my butt to pay this mortgage and all this stuff like this on my McMansion, and you want me to give a house to a drug addict. Right, it lets them make that, and you got to interrupt that and say, you know, what does the person that you're describing having a decent home, what does it do to your McMansion, right? What does it cost you? And you know, they'll start whining about taxes and stuff like that, and you'll be like, no, not really. it really doesn't cost you anything. But if we can talk about making sure that there are relief programs for you, and again, it's a really good moment for y'all to be doing this, because you can the last 2.5 years is a good lesson for people. Almost, it's going to be more than 2.5 years. It's like 2 years and 8 months at this point. It is a good lesson for people because people lost their jobs and their housing was jeopardized because of COVID. For people who had never had a brush with housing or housing insecurity ever, right? And so there's an opportunity to reach those people and say, think about how you felt and imagine that trauma every day. That's what the people you are calling drug addicts and scofflaws, that is what they are dealing with every day. And sometimes you can diagnose it back to a decision or a fault of theirs, but it's really the system. And imagine if you had to deal with that stress every day for the last 5 years. Would you be, you know, the most even-keeled temperament person making the most rational decisions? And so it's an opportunity to get them to understand that they want a social safety net, because they might need it, and they've had brushes with that. And Marla, I'm sorry you had your hand up for a while.
So two things. Yeah. One, on your last point, you know, it reminds me of the thought about, you know, how do we get away from what I would call the otherisms, right? It's those folks, it's other folks. So in our messaging, you know, being able first and foremost to say, you know, we're all one community. We all have a right to a safe, affordable place to call home, right? You remember some of the messaging stuff we did back when I was with LHA. You know, we're all one community. Right. I remember, and I shared with some of you all, I think some time ago, some work I'd done on around messaging. And I profiled a campaign that was trying to raise funds for, you know, to develop more housing. And one of their campaign slogans was, we need people who need affordable housing. And so then that gets to the original point I was going to mention, you know, and again, this is a messaging thing. When people ask what is affordable housing, you know, being able to distinguish what the sticks and bricks are versus the investment so someone can live in it. You know, so you've heard me say that 2x4 in that McMansion costs the same as that 2x4 in the affordable unit, yep. Right? It's a financing issue. It's not a product, right? How do you make that distinction? Because I think that's part of why you have the negative views, you know, and the stereotypes and the fears about affordable housing, because they think it's a product, and that product is designed for people who don't deserve to, have our tax dollars support them or assist them. So it gets, we have to be really clear on when we talk about affordable housing, that, because this is something we're increasingly dealing with at the city. When we invest our money, we are like a bank, right? We're not the developer or the contractor or, whatever. We're the bank investing into homes, right? Be they rental or ownership, So how do we help people understand even the role of government and its investment in community, its investment in homes, right? And it's not that there's an inferior product for a less than deserving individual, right? Everybody deserves a decent place to call home. And so, all of those things we'll need to be mindful of as we talk about the messaging aspect of it, because we do have to do a lot of myth busting, around who's in it, as well as where it ought to go, right? Because, you got that whole other conversation about, oh, it's going to destroy my property values. There's tons of research that shows just the opposite. And we have to be prepared to have that conversation as well, because we need to be able to put this housing all over Winston-Salem, not just in some places, right? So how do you have that conversation to help people understand that it's not a detriment to their community?
Yeah, one thing I just want to jump in there.
Go ahead, Darren, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just
sorry,
in
go
terms
ahead.
of the conversation, that just with the framing of the terms and these things, one of the have, and you all tell me if it's a good path forward, is when we talk about convening and having a conversation with stakeholders and folks who are doing the work, it may be well for us in terms of saying, okay, what are the specific areas of terms that we feel like are not clear? And, that having and establishing that initial meeting with the group to say, hey, we want to have this conversation, kick off the conversation. We're not defining these things for everybody. We want your input in helping us to have the terms that collectively work for all of the partners. And that is what we begin to help use as we begin to move forward in our communication. They're just trying to see where we play that role of, say, we're not clear on these things. We hear different stuff. Let's go to the group, bring them all together in our initial conversations to then come up with something that we feel can be used for us and other community partners.
And so to that, I was going to suggest that one of the things. Oh, Paula, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Really quickly, as it relates to messaging and communication, I know we talk a lot about the NIMBYs in our community, and their voices are loud. But I think that we may have as many more, what's the new term? YIMBYs, yes, in my backyard. And that we need to elevate their voices and, focus on them and let their voices be heard, so that we know that there are just as many people who are for affordable housing and multi-level housing in our community.
And that's a good point. The YIMBYs is a term that is just kind of evolving, because some of them are actually not in favor of affordable housing. So it's just a matter of who are just like, what does that term mean in Winston-Salem? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Andronika, you're looking for some suggestions from us on what to call this. Is that kind of where you?
That's what's prompted this conversation as we and down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, when, as several people have said, when we use the word affordable housing, people sometimes mistake that to say, well, that's public housing or deeply subsidized housing or whatever. What if we turn that, take that term affordable housing and flip it around and use something like making housing affordable in Winston-Salem? I mean, there's nothing magic about that. I just wanted to just get something on the table so people can, there may be better ways of saying it, but I thought, well, flip that word around. I still like the idea of affordable, but flip it around so people aren't thinking of that term so much as what we're doing to actually make it affordable.
I like that idea too, Paul.
Can y'all see the whiteboard? Hold on. It's not sharing. Okay, let's see. Y'all can't see the whiteboard, can you?
We see the board, but it's just, it says explore new tools and, okay, yeah, we're starting to see it now. Yeah, you've written.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It's yeah, I think it's just taking a second to catch up.
Oh, there we go. I moved something out the way. There we go.
Hey, I wanted to ask a question too, Marla. And you all help me remember this correctly, but do we still currently have the what is it, the Winston-Salem's 10-year plan in chronic homelessness, or is that still out there, or has that been concluded? I'm trying to remember. I think that was through the United Way or something, but that was around homelessness.
Right. That plan ended. Oh,
thought it was yeah.
It's been a number of years ago. I think they did some follow-up work,
right,
to kind of keep the ball rolling. But
right.
Now, as an outgrowth of that assessment of the COC that the city undertook last year, there's some new planning stuff that's going on. But one of the things that we had asked those consultants was to be on standby or make themselves available to bring the information and that they learned going through that assessment to this process.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that anything relative to homelessness was a part of this 10-year plan, because homelessness is the lack of housing. So it would have been, disingenuous to have a homelessness plan and then a housing plan, and so one of the things we knew was we needed to knock down that silo and have it incorporated into this larger plan.
And again, just making sure, because again, we're going to be talking to everybody about housing, so that includes homelessness, all the way up to 120.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that
that's right.
Whatever name we put out there, I didn't want it to confuse anybody who hadn't been involved in housing, maybe as long as some of us have been.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, no, it's something that happens. It's actually, George, you actually find that a lot in people who've been involved in housing for a long time. They try to make that distinction sometimes. While, there's additional funding around homelessness, our philosophy is, and it's y'all's philosophy as well, is that homelessness is the ultimate expression of the failure of a housing system. Those folks are homeless because the housing system can't accommodate them. It's not something separate. You have to do something extraordinary for some folks, particularly the chronically homeless, but it's not isolated. The best solution for them is to get them into a home that's affordable. That they'll need wraparound services and other things, but that's the best solution. And I'm just throwing up things. I'm listening to you all, and this is some of the things that I've heard you all say. I see Derwin coming in. Please come in and add or put down edits. And it feels like y'all definitely want whatever we call this to speak succinctly but accurately, right? So that it's very clear when we talk about what it is and that people understand it. Does anybody have any suggestions? Anybody? And please, Say you hate these. If you hate them, that we need to hear that. We need to know that. Paula, do you need me to move them around so you can see a little bit better? Because you're on your iPad?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Everybody got it? All right, there we go.
And this is just me. I don't. I know we have to have a defined time frame terms what we're doing so that you can have so you good opportunities to assess and that kind of thing internally knowing that. But the inclusion of that the 10-year plan component for two reasons it brings up stuff. One, at least for the majority of people in the housing space, I think locally when they hear 10-year plan, the first thing they think of is what George was just talking about, 10-year planning and chronic homelessness, because I think that's still a lot that's termed around. So there'll be some disassociation that has to happen if we keep that in there. And then the other part is how that is conveyed to the general public around 10-year plan. It doesn't sound as urgent or as immediate in that sense, and just wondering if that should or shouldn't be included in there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We got another one. Winston-Salem Housing Plan 2.0.
Yeah, it's funny for me to, as a career-long planner, to be saying this, but I guess I'm kind of hung up on the term plan. Given the criticism, here's another plan, but I'm trying to figure out.
Well, that's why I put strategy up there when Derwin, as he started riffing around moving to 10-year, I thought maybe I also put up this suggestion to kind of move it to something like strategy. Okay, well, I heard a and a Was that you, Paula?
I did the because the
Marla.
strategies and plans, kind of to Paul's point. I mean that's been part of the challenge, right? Oh, y'all already have a plan. Oh, y'all already have a strategy. Right. Yeah. So how do we articulate?
I have one thing. I have one question. Does everybody agree that we should take out 10-year?
I agree with that. I think Derwin has a good point. Yeah.
Okay, so that we can. Sorry, Marla. I just wanted to make some space make some space by taking out 10-year and using some of these, because we don't need to keep that if everybody agrees to be done with that. So now Marla, you're concerned about strategy as a term. Initiative kind of gets the same thing done, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the word as
what about blueprint?
That could work.
Yeah.
Can somebody use that in a sentence? Winston-Salem's housing blueprint for the future, or blueprint, or how does that?
Yeah, Winston-Salem's housing blueprint. How's that? What about that? And then the tagline could be under it saying, making our communities more affordable.
Yeah, I like that.
Works well for me too.
Well, making our communities affordable, not more affordable, affordable.
Affordable, yeah. Because whatever we do, we want to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible. So you don't get
that's right.
Separating.
That's right. How's that?
People, yeah.
Can you move it over because you can't really see the whole title.
Hold on, I'm sorry. How about there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
Now, can y'all see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Winston
And then we had,
opportunities.
yeah.
Make our community not plural, but singular.
Actually, I think it should drill down a little bit more. Instead of
Neighborhood.
I'm thinking even more than that. You know, what we're talking about everyone, so being a little bit more personal, if you will. I'm struggling for my word.
Daryl, were you saying community housing blueprint?
Because I'm looking for something, a word like an everyone, you know, where we're really calling out people.
What about something like a tagline like creating housing access for all?
Well, but access is where everyone had it. Now what's coming back is too many words, but it's like where a home is affordable for everyone.
Okay, hold on one second.
What I'm saying?
All right, so
yeah,
I got you. Wait, let me give me a second. We're gonna do a running list of taglines.
Marla, I may need to steal that one for Habitat.
I think you've got creative freedom, George.
Yeah. I like that. Where a home is affordable for all. Yeah.
Or for everyone.
For everyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where a home is affordable
for everyone.
For everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And shoot.
Because I don't want to use housing, because people don't go to housing, they go home, right? So that's why.
Right, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's right. Sorry, I'm just trying to move these around because we're going to play around with it a little bit. Come on. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is community redundant with Winston-Salem though?
You know, it also feels a little, for me, it feels a little, it also maybe have people thinking about, well, not my community. If it's more Winston, it's the whole city. But let's maybe try both.
Okay.
And
I like it
because I'd like to give the designer some options and let them see what they get.
I like the shortened version.
Sorry, Paula, hold on one second. I'm going to put it in the chat. Can you see that? I just chatted it at you, Paula. Okay. Okay. Ooh, Community spelled wrong. Like really wrong. Okay, I think without community too. All right, but looks like we got a name. Outstanding. All right, so we will get the designers going and send you all some options. They are eager to get started, to send you all some options on domain names and things like that. And so we'll be sending those to you all so y'all can review via email. We're gonna probably make it easier for y'all, set up some polling options to really make it easy. Like, so while if there's a need to have conversation and via email, we can do that. But if we want you all to, rank things and look at things and narrow things down, we'll send you options via a poll and let you pick, right? Rather than, because we want to spare everybody's emails. Obviously, if there's yes.
I'm sorry, the two names I see on the screen, if you still have your board up, the first one just says
Yep.
Winston-Salem's housing. Did you leave blueprint off that on purpose?
It's still on there for mine. I think the technology is just not working as well as it could anymore. But what I'm looking at, it still says Winston-Salem's housing blueprint. So I think it's the technology is like, this is cute. You tried this really well. But right. It's
just want to make sure. Yeah. All right. That's where I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I think the technology is just it's reached its limit. Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but yeah, I think that's what's happened. Okay, so we'll get this to everybody, share this with you all, because Paula can't see it at all. So she's totally lost it. So yeah, I think like I said, I think we've reached the limit of the collaborativeness of this, and we should thank Zoom for stepping its game up, even if it hasn't worked. It's still better than Teams. Sorry, Marla.
Oh no, I agree. I prefer Zoom to Teams. Okay, very good.
All right.
All right.
Let me turn this off. That's it. Here it is. All right.
Derwin, does it look like I don't know? There's a part of me that feels like we kind of skipped to the third bullet primarily.
We did.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to hang out with you all, or if you have any other questions, we'll get moving on this. And but I do know y'all have other things to talk about.
Right. Okay. Derwin put some stuff in the chat. Okay, I'll just copy all of this. I'll save the chat. So let me just make sure I'm kind of clear on some of our next steps. We'll need to update our schedule, and we're looking at kind of on parallel tracks, developing part of the communication strategy as well as the engagement strategy. Okay. Would you guess that we would have some kind of gathering with some members of the community
let's just say by the end of March? How soon are you looking to maybe be on the ground?
I'm hoping to do a kickoff, the soft kickoff in February. We're gonna have to, we're gonna have to talk about how we make that work. But yeah, getting that together. But yeah, March at the latest.
Okay.
And I'm looking at Derwin's question. I think this is something that we do need to go back to and confirm, and not even confirm, like lay out inside of some of the questions that we're going to talk to you all about is the fact that there is going to need to be, once it's going, at least a monthly check-in with some version of this body, in my opinion. If it's a small subset of volunteers, if it's a number of people who we pick a date and whoever can show up shows up. But we do need to think about that. I do need to hear from you all what your preference is for that. Like I said, I think, and I do think that there is going to come a time where there's going to need to be a group of people we may need to meet with even more frequently. Marla would obviously be a part of that team, and then it may be a couple of you who we can tap for. Again, we can keep those meetings tight, under 30 minutes, and get in and get out. Because particularly when we are doing the outreach with community, and the initial, just like we had this conversation, there's going to be a lot of unpacking that needs to be done, right? And so we want to make sure that we can prep for those meetings. If y'all are aware of anybody who has concerns, who's going to be at the meeting, who's going to raise issues, and so and we're going to rely on you all for that, because y'all know the players, y'all already know some of the problematic folks, and so we're going to want to just be able to put our hands on you. And again, it can be something that we lay out via email, ask folks for input for, and say if we need to have a conversation about it. This is when and figure out a time to meet. So it's three things that I just asked for. Regular monthly communications. Who is that with? Right, in this body? Marla and her team, obviously, but who from the Affordable Housing Coalition will we want to meet with monthly? We will look at your meeting schedule for the rest of the year and lay that and integrate that with the existing schedule. So for big decisions, we'll try to line those up as best we can. But like I said, we are going to need to touch base with y'all once a month after we do the big kickoff. And y'all got to tell us what that looks like, if it's a handful of you, or if it's we add in a monthly schedule to the coalition and whoever shows up does. We'd like to get those set as standing meetings, just so y'all can plan, we can plan, and you may also want to recommend some other people. We'd also like you all to think about one or two other people who are not officially a part of the coalition who could help, play an informal role in forming this process, if you think that's worthwhile. And again, I'm hearing some of you, there's people have concerns, and sometimes bringing those people in to the conversation helps, right? It helps allay their fears and their concerns, and lets them understand that this is a process that is open and intends to hear what community and what the citizens of Winston-Salem have to say. That's number one. Number two, when we need you more frequently, who will that be? And number three, is everybody okay with us making sure that we are on your regular scheduled meetings for big ticket items? Okay, that's number three. I saw yes. So number two, y'all are and again, we don't have to decide that today. We're going to make some recommendations, not necessarily on who, but what that looks like and what we're looking for, and give y'all some ideas of what the timing could look like, and people can tell us. I'm just going through Derwin's list. That to me, that's where Derwin said lay people, elected officials, partners. And this is another piece that's really important. That first soft convening with the stakeholders, as it were, right? We are going to talk to them about this. They're going to have a lot of concerns. They're going to have a lot of issues. They're going to talk about a lot of things that y'all talked about. They're going to bring up things that y'all think are settled. There's nothing. That's not a problem. That's not anything like that. It's just what's going to happen, and it's great. You have the conversations, educate, engage, and inform, and then those folks are going to want to get to work because they're like, okay, this is happening. This is what we want to see happen. The community engagement piece is important. It's more than important. It's vital. And so those stakeholders are also, we're going to have to give them something to do. And that is, they're going to help us inform the community engagement piece. What kind of information do you want to get from community? We want to get them in the mindset of, we understand that you have expertise. We understand that you have not deep knowledge around housing and things that have worked and not worked, but most of you don't have the lived experience. That is why the community engagement component is so vital. And so we need you to be thinking about what you want to hear from community. And then starting the listening tours, getting the information from community, and then bringing that back to the stakeholders. And then going back out again to make sure that community understands that theirs is not, and this is not extracted. It is a two-way collaborative piece. And again, getting everyone to recognize that, because your stakeholders, once they get past we feel like we're doing this again, we're going to show them how this is different than the processes they've gone through before. And that doesn't make those processes worthless. It means that this is the next step, right? That those processes have led Winston-Salem to taking this next step. And this next step is it's intensive, it's work, but it also, it's not just saying to the people who normally show up at these meetings that yours are the only voices that matter, right? It's centering, the people of Winston-Salem in a way that some of them are not going to be comfortable with or familiar with. And we'll work them through it. But yeah, so that's part of, and that's part of it, yeah. And so to your, and I'm just looking at Derwin's notes, who are we communicating with? It is everybody, right? It's everybody in different ways, because you want your larger community to know that this is happening, and there's going to need to be some targeted pieces. Y'all have done I was incredibly impressed with the level of engagement that y'all have been able to muster around these conversations. Not just the fact that you actually had regular people on those first few meetings in the room with developers, and they were actually talking to each other is really great. We want to see more of that, so people are hearing each other at the same time. That's the ideal version, and they can talk about it. We also did have some of you more educated and engaged people with some critique that was more about gripes. Not, that's going to happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's important that they understand how the system works and how they want to change it. If they want to change it, they can't just be complaining. It's like, well, what do you want to change it to? How would you suggest this work? And then how does that actually not benefit your organization? How does that benefit community? So keeping that in mind, keeping the end result in mind. And the other thing, Derwin, I know you're on the call. data. The data is very important, so that people, we have to, if we're talking about, y'all's tagline is, making housing affordable for all, making homes, wait a minute, I lost it just that quick. Where a home is affordable for everyone, how many people don't have that, right? That's the number. How many people don't have that? That's the point. And Paula, we haven't drilled down exactly on the exact numbers. There are going to be at least 3 opportunities inside the process where we're going to be going out. That, when I say that does not mean that's the number of meetings, right? It's like, no, we're going to go out with the intention of speaking to people in as many ways as possible. There could be as many as a dozen meetings. It could be as few as 5. We're going to really have to push that out and figure out how to carve up the city. And there is a section of the city, Marla, as I recall, that we can't go into without permission first, right? So we're going to have to talk about that, because we're going to have to do that. No, they're not going to let us go at all?
Really?
Okay.
We'll follow up, but yeah, we'll follow
up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, yeah. That's answering all of Derwin's questions.
I see Paul has put in the chat that he thinks the whole coalition should be in on the once per month meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe as many as can get in should attend, and that's separate from our regular monthly meeting.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's probably just, if you can, please try.
Right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. What other items for the coalition? I think this has been a great call. Of course, on your agenda, I've noted some developments just to be mindful of. That first one on the request for proposals, we're trying to get it on the website right now, so that should be live hopefully any minute now for the permanent supportive housing development. So we're trying to get moving on the development side, and also we're looking for a facilitator for our consolidated planning that's required by HUD every 5 years. So that RFP is up today as well by our purchasing department. Our plan is due to HUD in May, so we have a tight timeline. So if you know of anybody who can facilitate this kind of work, please encourage them to respond to the RFP, because we're going to hit the ground ready, fast and furious. And then, of course, some of you may have heard about the White House announcement the other day about the Renters' Bill of Rights that they're looking to develop. So few activities that are related to our work that I want to make you aware of. Mm-hmm. Any comments, questions, anything else we should handle before I think we close out today?
And Marla, our meetings are still the regular 4th Friday of every month at 10 o'clock?
That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All righty. Well, if there's nothing else, Ryan, let me see. Yeah, Ryan's still on. You're vice chair, or maybe you can handle the closeout.
You just need a motion from me, Marla?
Sure.
So move that we adjourn.
Move that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
By
Thank
the way,
everybody for your
Marla,
time today.
Marla, I will miss the next meeting on the 4th Friday, so I'll just let you know that now. So.
All righty. All right. Well,
Sorry.
all right. Appreciate it. We'll follow up for sure, though.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend.
All right.